A few days ago, my brother and I got into a discussion on what makes a Western a Western. What constitutes a book or movie to becoming a Western? My brother argued that it had to involve crime of some sort, usually cowboy and Indian tropes, and unless it was a neo-Western, it had to be set in the mid to late 1800s. I argued, however, that it wasn't so clear-cut. As someone who adores Westerns and the West itself, I took on a more abstract approach. I argued that it wasn't necessarily about the specific details, not about whether or not crime happened, or even if it took place when cowboys were around. To me, the Western is something broader, something not easily labeled or put into a container, but a feeling. Now, I have a hard time articulating exactly what that feeling is. I mean, you can't really define an entire genre as something so vague and subjective as a feeling. I was getting close with my explanations, but while I was writing the script for the video, I decided to actually just look up what the definition of a Western is, and the one I found on Wikipedia was pretty much perfect. This is it. The Western is a film genre defined by the American Film Institute as films which are set in the American West that embody the spirit, the struggle, and the demise of the new frontier. The aspect of this definition, the idea that a Western embodies the spirit of the new frontier, is particularly what rings true to me. And while I still believe that the other aspects of this definition still constitute a Western, I want to focus on the spirit aspect, because it's what draws me most to the genre. I want to talk about the spirit of the West, because it's something important, something that lives inside of me and never leaves. It may be naive, it may be just my youth talking, but the feeling, at least in this point of my life, is real enough. Now, I don't live in the West, but I have been fortunate enough to visit it multiple times. And ever since I first stepped foot on the Rocky Mountains of Montana, I've never really left. Some part of me always remains there, and it's just a matter of time before I return. This isn't something I can easily explain, and while the purpose of this video is to give that feeling justice, it's likely it won't fully do so. I'm aware a lot of this might sound like pretty hippy-dippy, but bear with me, because if you know, you know. And if not, then I guess this is where we differ. The West is an utter grandeur. The sheer rock-faced cliffs of the mountains, the dry breeze, leaves from the towering redwoods rustling ever so gently in the wind. There's a life to the West, a drunkenness in just being there that I've never experienced anywhere else. It's a place where I've never felt so at home. It's why I believe I was drawn so quickly to the Western genre. It was during a trip last year to South Dakota that I became immensely interested in reading the Western genre. I think it was because I wanted to find a way back there, to the West, whenever I wanted. And I did. Through art, I was searching for the lifeblood which the West brings me, a sense of complete wholeness and belonging in body, spirit, and mind. I found it in photography, paintings, drawings, authors like Cormac McCarthy, John Williams, Larry McMurtry, who all capture this feeling with such precision and beauty that it takes me back to those high altitudes in seconds. See, to me, the Western is not just cowboys and Indians, men on horseback, or even a time period. It is a spirit. It's a connection with this idea of the new frontier, this idea that has attracted and destroyed men and women alike for centuries, this idea that beyond civilization, beyond any constructs of society and knowledge, there lies an untouched land more terrifying and gorgeous than anyone could imagine. That was the new frontier. At least, that's what it is to me. Don't get me wrong, it is a romanticized idea, one that has undoubtedly led to misfortune, disappointment, and the ruthless destruction of indigenous cultures. It's this very romanticization which is depicted and deglorified in John Williams' Butcher's Crossing, through the wide-eyed protagonist of Andrews. And most of these authors that I mentioned are there to deconstruct the mythic qualities of the West, but simultaneously they depict the same wonder which has drawn so many to the West. I'm aware that what I'm saying here is romanticizing the West, in a way just as Andrews does. But like all romanticizations, there is something to it. There's an underlying reason for why these constructs of thought began. And yes, it is important to understand where the lines of fiction and reality begin to blur together, and to know when these ideas are perverted and become harmful. But undeniably, there is something there. There's something there in those mountains and that land, which were there before we ever were. There's something in those cold streams and riverbanks. There's something there to those peaks and valleys and deserts which span further than we can see, to this landscape that will outlive us and never so much as flinch. There's something of a spirit, a heart-racing excitement, an intoxication to be found on these scenes out of heaven. And maybe I'm crazy and a bit over-romantic and, yeah, a little hippy-dippy after all. Fair enough. Maybe I'm all those things. But I still believe there is something there. And so every day I wait. Every day I wait for when eventually I go back home. That is the spirit of the West.